There are moments in royal life that arrive quietly, without announcement or spectacle, yet leave a deep impression on those who notice them. Over recent months, careful observers of the royal family began to sense subtle changes, small shifts in routine, thoughtful adjustments in public appearances, and moments that invited reflection rather than explanation. Nothing dramatic was declared. Nothing extraordinary was announced. And yet, for many, these moments raised gentle questions about how life inside the palace continues to evolve, especially for a family raising young children under constant public attention. In one such recent moment, Princess Catherine addressed the public in a calm and composed manner, speaking with the clarity and restraint that has long defined her approach to royal duty. Her words were measured, thoughtful, and intentionally focused on reassurance rather than detail. She did not offer personal disclosures, nor did she invite speculation. Instead, she acknowledged the realities of family life lived in the public eye, where even ordinary moments are often viewed through an extraordinary lens. Before we explore why this moment resonated so strongly with royal watchers around the world, take a moment to subscribe to the channel if you value respectful, carefully researched stories about royal history and modern monarchy. Your support helps keep this space thoughtful and focused. The setting itself reflected the tone of the message. This was not a grand announcement or a formal press conference. It was a controlled, private environment where words were chosen with care and intent. Those present understood that the purpose was not to create headlines, but to maintain transparency without crossing personal boundaries. Princess Catherine spoke not only as the Princess of Wales, but also as a parent navigating the responsibilities that come with raising children in a highly visible role. She emphasized balance between public duty and private family life, and the importance of allowing children the space to grow without unnecessary pressure or interpretation. When Prince Louis was mentioned, it was done with warmth and restraint. There were no labels, no dramatic framing, and no suggestion of circumstances beyond what has already been visible during public appearances. Instead, the focus remained on understanding, patience, and the broader experience of childhood within the royal household. Observers noted that this approach aligned closely with how the Prince and Princess of Wales have consistently handled family matters, acknowledging public interest while firmly protecting personal boundaries. Royal commentators later reflected that the message was less about explaining circumstances and more about setting expectations, reminding audiences that not every aspect of royal family life is meant for public discussion. As news of the address spread, public reaction followed swiftly. Viewers around the world responded with thoughtful messages, many expressing appreciation for the calm and dignified tone. Rather than fueling speculation, the moment encouraged reflection on privacy, responsibility, and the human side of public life. Inside royal circles, the atmosphere was described as serious but steady. Senior members of the family were said to be supportive of the approach taken, recognizing the importance of clarity without overexposure. This was not a departure from tradition, but a continuation of a carefully maintained balance between openness and discretion. What made this moment particularly striking was not what was said, but how it was said. In an age where headlines often favor extremes, the choice to speak calmly and to leave certain details unaddressed stood out. It reinforced the idea that strength, especially within the monarchy, is often expressed through restraint rather than revelation. And as the public continues to reflect on this moment, it becomes clear that its significance lies not in dramatic interpretation, but in the quiet message it conveyed about family, responsibility, and the evolving nature of modern royal life. What made this moment stand apart was not a dramatic declaration, but the intention behind it. Princess Catherine's final words were calm, deliberate, and reflective, designed not to disrupt tradition, but to gently acknowledge a reality many families understand all too well. Rather than challenging royal protocol, her message reinforced a principle that has quietly guided her public role for years: clarity without overexposure. She did not frame her remarks as a confrontation, nor did she present them as a revelation. Instead, she chose careful language that emphasized understanding and responsibility. It was a reminder that public roles, no matter how historic, still exist alongside private family life. The significance of her words lay not in what they revealed, but in what they chose not to define. To understand why this moment resonated so deeply, royal observers have pointed to a series of subtle changes that unfolded over time. These were not sudden absences or unexplained disappearances, but but small, practical adjustments that often go unnoticed outside close public scrutiny. Like many families, the Prince and Princess of Wales have occasionally adapted schedules to suit personal priorities, particularly where children are concerned. Over recent months, Prince Louis appeared less frequently at select public engagements. This was neither unprecedented nor unusual within the royal family, where younger children are often shielded from excessive public exposure. Still, attentive royal followers noted these changes and began discussing them within the broader context of how the modern monarchy approaches childhood. Public events continued as planned. Official portraits were released with their usual formality and polish. Yet, as is often the case in the digital age, ordinary decisions were quickly analyzed beyond their original intent. A family photograph here, a revised schedule there, each detail became part of a larger conversation about visibility, privacy, and expectation. Royal commentators were quick to urge caution, reminding audiences that not every adjustment signals a deeper issue. Children within the royal household have historically stepped back from public view at various stages, particularly during periods of growth or transition. These choices are typically made quietly, without public explanation, in keeping with long-standing tradition. Behind the scenes, palace communications remained consistent and measured. Brief statements emphasized normal family routines and the importance of balance while avoiding unnecessary detail. This approach, familiar to those who follow royal history, reflects an understanding that speculation often thrives in the absence of restraint, not transparency. What stood out most during this period was the contrast between public curiosity and the palace's steady composure. Rather than reacting to every question or interpretation, the royal household maintained its focus on continuity and calm. This restraint, while sometimes misunderstood, has long been a defining feature of the institution. Observers later reflected that Princess Catherine's remarks did not introduce new information, but rather provided context. They served as a gentle reminder that public life does not erase personal boundaries and that some moments are best understood without amplification. As attention continued to build, it became clear that the story was not about absence or silence, but about approach. In an era driven by instant answers, the choice to move thoughtfully stood out. And it is within this measured response that the deeper significance of the moment begins to take shape. As the discussion continued behind palace walls, it became increasingly clear that the situation was not defined by a single document, statement, or moment. What drew attention instead was the language of caution, carefully chosen phrases that reflected long-term planning, discretion, and a desire to manage public understanding rather than invite it. Within royal operations, such language is not unusual. The monarchy has always relied on structure, process, and careful communication to protect both its public role and private family life. Still, the presence of highly technical terminology in internal planning discussions sparked renewed debate among observers about where the line between privacy and transparency truly lies. When these internal considerations became the subject of quiet conversation within media circles, the palace response was swift and disciplined. Communication channels were tightened, access protocols were reviewed. Long-standing procedures were reinforced, not out of panic, but out of instinct. This was an institution doing what it has done for generations, maintaining order through control. Publicly, nothing changed. Official appearances continued. Statements remained brief and neutral. Yet behind the scenes, the atmosphere had shifted, not because of fear, but because of awareness. Every decision now carried added weight, knowing how easily interpretation could outrun intention. Senior members of the royal household convened to reassess approach rather than assign blame. These meetings, described later as measured but serious, focused on consistency, ensuring that family welfare remained central while public communication stayed grounded and respectful. One notable absence during these internal discussions drew quiet attention, not concern. Within royal circles, absence does not always signal disagreement. Often, it reflects trust, confidence that voices do not need to be present in every room to be heard. At the heart of these conversations was not speculation, but balance. How much should be shared? How much should remain protected? These questions are not new to the monarchy, but they take on renewed complexity when children are involved. History has shown that young royals are often given space away from public view, particularly during periods of growth and change. Observers noted that what followed was not escalation, but restraint. The palace chose steadiness over reaction. Rather than addressing every rumor or interpretation, it allowed time to soften the noise, trusting that calm would eventually outlast curiosity. Within the family itself, emotions were described as reflective rather than confrontational. Moments of disagreement were handled privately, as they always have been. Loyalty, after all, does not require uniformity of thought, only shared purpose. What became increasingly evident was that the real story was not about documents, discussions, or decisions. It was about values, protection, responsibility, and the evolving understanding of how a centuries-old institution adapts to a modern world that demands immediacy. As these dynamics unfolded, one thing remained constant: the determination to prioritize family over frenzy, to move carefully rather than loudly, and to choose dignity over spectacle. Yet even as the palace maintained its course, connections beyond its walls began to stir. Conversations took place quietly, away from cameras and formal channels, not as interventions, but as expressions of understanding born from shared experience. And it was within these private exchanges, unseen, unheard, and unrecorded, that the next chapter quietly began to take shape. When Catherine finally answered the call, the conversation unfolded without ceremony or agenda. Harry did not speak as a royal figure shaped by titles or distance, but as someone shaped by experience. His words carried understanding rather than instruction, recognition rather than pressure. He spoke about what silence can do over time, how it can be framed as responsibility, loyalty, or duty until it becomes something heavier, something isolating. Catherine listened without interruption, absorbing the weight of words spoken not from opposition, but from familiarity. Their conversation stretched on, uninterrupted and unrecorded. No advisors, no protocols. Just two people shaped by public life, speaking privately about the cost it can carry. Those minutes would later be remembered not for what was said, but for what shifted. What mattered most was not persuasion, but reassurance. Catherine later reflected that the exchange reminded her she was not navigating these choices alone, that understanding can sometimes arrive from unexpected places. The ripple of that conversation extended quietly. For the first time in some time, communication reopened where distance had settled. Conversations resumed, not to resolve history, but to acknowledge the present. These exchanges did not erase division, but they softened its edges. Within palace operations, momentum continued to build. Discussions intensified. Not confrontational, but cautious. The institution, faced with increasing public focus, returned to its instinctive posture, preservation through restraint. Senior advisors weighed implications carefully, not in terms of suppression or confrontation, but of timing, tone, and responsibility. Every option carried consequence, every delay, its own interpretation. As the moment approached, attempts were made to slow the pace, not to silence, but to reconsider. To ensure that any public communication reflected stability rather than reaction. The concern was not disclosure itself, but the unpredictable effect of emotion intersecting with global attention. Amid these considerations, pressure turned toward alignment. Not coercion, but appeal. A request for patience, for pause, for one more internal conversation before words reached the public. But restraint has limits, and for Catherine, that limit had quietly been reached. Not in anger, but in clarity. Outside the palace walls, public attention sharpened, not driven by headlines but by perception. The sense that something meaningful was approaching, not because of spectacle, but because of resolve. Within the institution, the atmosphere shifted, not chaotic but unsettled. Familiar structures felt momentarily fragile, not broken, questioned. And Catherine, steady amid it all, did not retreat. She understood the moment not as defiance, but as responsibility, not toward the institution, but toward honesty. When the time came, the setting was simple. No ceremony, no symbolism, just presence. The focus was not authority, but authenticity. Not distance, but connection. As the screen came into view, there was no need for introduction. The absence of formality spoke for itself. The nation watched, not as spectators, but as witnesses. And as Catherine prepared to speak, it became clear that what followed would not be about conflict or accusation, but about perspective. About choosing voice over hesitation. About stepping forward, not against tradition, but alongside truth. One line, delivered with quiet resolve, captured the heart of the moment. She spoke of joy, of unity, of standing beside her child not as a symbol, but as a parent. In that instant, distance dissolved. The formality that often surrounds royal life gave way to something unmistakably human. The response that followed was immediate, yet measured. Messages of understanding flowed in, not fueled by spectacle, but by connection. Across communities, people recognized the universality of her message. This was not about royalty. It was about empathy. Inside the palace, reflection followed. Conversations turned inward. Long-standing practices were revisited with renewed sensitivity, particularly regarding the role of children within public life. The moment marked not disruption, but reconsideration. In the days that followed, public appearances were paused, not as protest, but as space, to allow reflection to settle and meaning to take root. The absence spoke quietly, reinforcing that some moments require stillness rather than display. Beyond palace walls, dialogue expanded. Questions were asked, perspectives shifted, not in pursuit of upheaval, but understanding. And at the center of it all stood Catherine, unchanged in tone, steady in resolve. What she offered was not revelation, but recognition. A reminder that strength does not always arrive loudly, and courage does not always demand confrontation. Sometimes, it simply asks to be seen. As this chapter closes, one truth remains clear. This moment was never about headlines or history. It was about humanity. And in choosing voice over silence, Catherine reshaped not only perception, but possibility. Thank you for watching.